Hi everyone, my name is Arati Rao. I am Senior Digital Governance Manager in HSBC's Group Digital Experience and Accessibility team. Thank you all for joining us today. Look, in this digital world, our customers expect banking at their fingertips. Our staff want access to systems that support their roles. And they want options, and they want seamless experiences regardless of what or whose systems they're using. So working with suppliers can bring a variety of benefits to the table: innovation, skill sets, new products to the market quicker, and other efficiencies. But how do we ensure that the products that the suppliers provide meet the same standards that we would expect of our own in-house build? At HSBC, we have a vision to be the most accessible bank. And we want to use our size, our brand, and most of all, our values to influence that supply chain. So we can leave the world in a better place than we found it. Today, we're going to explore what we've been doing as an organisation, procurement's role, and of course, gain some suppliers' perspective as well. So joining me today, I have Hanna Helgesdotter, Supply Chain Sustainability Manager, Ben Ineson, Category Manager from our procurement function. We also have Rory Lawson, Account Director, and Kirsty, Senior Front-End Developer from Kineo, one of our e-learning partners. So thank you all for joining me today. I'm going to actually start with you, Hanna, because diversity and inclusion is part of our procurement sustainability objectives. Could you tell us more about this?
Yeah, no, sure. And I think you actually touched upon it already. You know, let's start from the very beginning. In an organization like HSBC or any other big corporate, we already spend a lot of money within our supply chain. So our job from a sustainability perspective is to make sure that we spend that in the most sustainable way possible, right? So as a bank, we obviously have a sustainability strategy in place that touches upon things like us wanting to be net zero within our own operations till 2030, and also within our supply chain. But there are also other things. I think there tends to be a lot of focus on the E within ESG, right? Today, we're probably talking more about the S, which is equally important, I will say from an opportunity perspective, even bigger. So some of the things that we're doing there is very much related to things like human rights, making sure that our suppliers sign our code of conduct, that we can assess and monitor them based upon that perspective, but also from a D&I perspective. So are our suppliers diverse in ownership? How can we work more with them from a requirements perspective in terms of actually making sure that they are working with diversity as well? So just a few things that we do from a sustainability perspective.
And then focusing on the diversity inclusion part of it, why is it so important in the procurement strategy?
So I think it's extra important for the procurement strategy, specifically for the reason that one of HSBC's core values is that we value difference. We believe that this is a way for us to not just drive positive change for the bank in general, but also within our supply chains. So that means that our supply chain is a key component on really reflecting the communities where we operate. So by working with suppliers that are diverse, we can then make sure that we provide the consumers with the products and the services that they need and fit their needs. And I think the key thing, and it's been touched upon earlier today as well, is that some things can be read, but the best way to make sure that we have services that are fit for purpose for everyone is to make sure that that representation is there also within the supply chain. So a couple of things that we've done to allow diverse suppliers to make it easier to work with them is that we have very clear targets on increasing our spend, our actual cash spend with diverse suppliers. So not taking away, but also focusing on that outside of quality and delivery times. We also want them to be diverse. So we've launched a portal where diverse suppliers can sign up and tell us, hey, we would love to do business with you. This is what I can provide for you, and we can then take that on from a commercial perspective. And I think that from a digital accessibility perspective, this has been a really, really good example on how we can collaborate. We see it more and more, that the more requirements that we put into our code of conduct, to our business contracts with our suppliers, we're actually able to drive that change with them and say, look, this is important to us, so you need to be able to deliver on it. And I think that has been a key concept for us from a sustainability perspective for the supply chain.
Wonderful, thank you, Hannah. Rory, digital accessibility. Why is it important in your organisation?
So just to provide a little bit of context, so Kirsty and I, we work for City and Guilds. We're a business called Kineo within that. The core kind of products and services that we design and deliver around education, vocational education from City and Guilds, through to digital product design for learning within large corporate organisations like HSBC. The agenda is very important to us. We're very committed to it. It underpins our group purpose. Our purpose is about helping people with their education and skills development, creating better chance for success and growth for them personally. We've set about creating a culture internally and supporting that so that our colleagues, everybody that we support is enabled in our agenda. It's an area that's kind of critical to us as a business. At the end of the day, if we can't provide a service where people can access our products and our services and the content that we deliver, if they don't get a good enough kind of product that they can access, then it's just simply not a good product. So it's critically important to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree with you, because, you know, well-designed products and services benefit everybody, not just particular groups, right? And, you know, it's so important to have accessibility as part of the process right up from the start. And, you know, if we are working with partners like yourself, I do think it's so important for us to set the expectations right up from the start as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, of course, we've been having challenges, right? So when a team comes to us, at that point, a lot of the times they've already onboarded a supplier. And they come to our governance process and we say, here's the standards, this is what you need to go out and do and meet. And because they haven't properly discussed digital accessibility in the first place, they then have to go back and revisit plans, the resourcing, the time and effort it takes. So really critical for us to find a way to set those expectations right up front. And that's why we came to you, Ben, in the procurement team, to see how we could do that. How can procurement play a role in this, and how do you set those expectations with suppliers?
Yeah, sure. So I think procurement's role, there's a couple of roles that I think procurement can do really well in this. Foremost for me is being a gatekeeper. So it's, you know, we see the majority of projects and work that comes through, certainly our organisation, most of your procurement teams will see the majority of work that comes through them. We can sit there as a gatekeeper and really early on bring in the right parties, bring in people like you, Arati, and your team, bring in legal, bring in our risk and compliance teams, and really help support that and drive that. So for me, that's probably the biggest role that we play. That connection into other parts of the business, I think, is really important. And then the final piece is really just being able to set expectations way earlier than a lot of people in the organisation can, right? So we now, through processes that we've worked with you, we've built in digital accessibility standards to our RFP process, which means before we've even got costs, before we've got proposals back from suppliers, we've made it really clear, this is our standards, this is what we expect you to meet. Don't care about cost at this moment, make sure you meet that before you even come to the table. And I think that's the biggest role we've been able to play. That's part of managing those expectations. I won't lie, it's not been an easy journey. We're certainly a big organisation for us. We've done a lot of work, which I think is really important to highlight, in getting our procurement teams up to speed. So we've had to train our teams, we've provided guidance documents, we've provided support packs, we've built it into our processes. we've acknowledged, and I think it's a really important acknowledgement, that procurement are not SMEs when it comes to digital accessibility. There is no expectation that they will be. That's what teams like Arati's team and Marley's team are here to do. So we've connected them in to make sure that they feel comfortable with the right documentation to have those initial conversations. But there's a whole support network sat behind there to really make sure that they've got the support they need. Some really cool stuff we did. We got the team into a global town hall. We had one of our customers come in and demonstrate using his screen reader, the HSBC app, different apps from different organisations, how they work, how they don't. And actually that really helped the procurement team go, oh, this is really important actually. If we get this wrong, it's really bad. And if we get this right, it's amazing. So things like that, just bringing it to life for those teams. You know, procurement people tend to see contracts. We tend to see the back end. It was good to see sort of what all this actually results in, which was great. And that's how we set those expectations up front.
Yeah, and I guess after setting the expectations, you know, we also have to work together to kind of ask ourselves, okay, well, we've got responses in from the supplier, what's next? And I suppose there's a couple of steps for us that we can take, right? And that's what we can support you with on that. The areas that we can do is learn more about the supplier, their organisation, their values, how compliant are they at the moment? If they're not compliant, what's their roadmap to compliance? And then just, you know, have really candid discussions with them. I'm not going to lie, these are discussions that can take a while. So often it's best to get started as soon as possible. But, you know, the final result is after those candid discussions, if they don't meet our values, if they can't meet the expectations, then, of course, we can always choose not to proceed with the supplier. And I think, you know, Hanna, I think you might have said it's about reflecting the communities, right? So we just want to make sure we're buying products and services that benefit everybody. But look, I think we all know that building digital, accessible products can be a challenge. It doesn't come without challenges. So, Kirsty, you've obviously been involved in this quite a bit. What kind of challenges have Kineo faced and overcome?
I think in a world of digital chaos, the importance to make technology accessible for all is more important than ever. And an area that can be overlooked in learning design is accessibility. It's all too easy to think that if needed, accessibility features can be added to learning that's already been created. When we think about accessibility, we need a different mindset. It's not a question of, do you consider yourself to have a disability, but do you have an access requirement? Not all of our clients have guidelines when it comes to accessibility in their digital learning, but what we have seen over the years is a big shift in WCAG being a key requirement.
Yep.
There are changes in legislation that support this. So since 2018, there was new legislation that affects public sector bodies, so higher education, further education, some charities, although Kineo has always been proactive in supporting inclusive design. In regard to the technology, WCAG are web guidelines, and digital learning has far more interaction than your standard web content, so there's still a lot left to be interpreted. Mm-hmm. I'd say it's easier when they are set rules and examples to follow, but it's those grey areas where we've had to work out the best implementation, and that's been a learning journey for us. But Kineo's invested both time and energy into its technology stack, its people and its processes.
Yeah, that's great. And how has the partnership with HSBC supported this?
I think from day one, HSBC requested and set a vision for inclusive design, and at the centre of this is accessibility. It's put ADAPT, our authoring technology, under a magnifying glass. So on top of our internal accessibility testers at Kineo, we've got HSBC's accessibility team and an external auditor, Atos, reviewing all of our courses. We set a mandate for defining and testing certain components we use to create our learning and have these tested by HSBC. That way we can be confident that we're giving the best user experience with every project we deliver.
Yeah.
The feedback as well has been really valuable. I think both in terms of the development of Adapt, but Kineo's best practice when it comes to accessibility, and we're past the point now of discovering new accessibility issues in Adapt, and instead we're continuously making improvements.
Are you seeing less defects from the support that we've been able to provide you guys?
Yeah, definitely.
Wonderful. Rory, would you say our governance process has set some standards for you?
Yes, so I think going back to one of the points before, so right at the beginning of our relationship, it was very clear from the guidelines that we were provided that there were some very high standards here at HSBC. The guide goes into about 50 pages covering all sorts of things, but a key part of it is accessibility and inclusive design. But it's all very well having governance and control kind of documents in place, but it's the interpretation of those and how you actually translate that into day-to-day projects. And I think that's really where we've seen the design unit here at HSBC really kind of lead the way. People like Andreas, who's in the room today, they work very closely with us in that translation process in terms of these are the things that we expect. And then when we're working through our design processes, there's always somebody there. So the makeup of the project team from both sides has different disciplines. So everything from a learning designer, from a learning consultant, technical people, developers, etc., front-end developers. And from HSBC, there's a consultant that follows us through the whole design process. So when we're setting out the very initial design phase and the designs that we put forward, it's checking that through from an inclusive design kind of lens and from an accessibility lens perspective. And then when we're getting through to the later stages of the development process, when we're actually authored the content, we put it through our testing, and HSBC has enabled us to actually access the infrastructure here, so we can actually test our content on the platforms that employees are going to actually undertake the learning from. Actually, we test it on there to make sure that it's working as it should. We also have a lot of support in terms of we have at least once within the project life cycle, it goes through to an accessibility testing team here at HSBC, which is probably part of your team. Yeah. And we get a report back about some of the defects, and then Kirsty and others in the team step forward, we review those, and then we put those things right within the product design. At the beginning of this year, we did an audit, which was led by HSBC and a third party, a company called Atos. So the idea behind it was that within our e-learning templates, there are common web components that are used for the interactivity within design. So we had all of these audited, checked, tested, a very comprehensive report sent back to us. And we were able to then go through our ADAPT framework and integrate and implement all of the, some were issues, some were ideas, things that could further develop our product to make it much more accessible. So we went through that audit and implemented that. That now serves all the way through our products that we design now. So every piece of learning that goes through meets the standard from the audit and from the WCAG guidelines and so on. Yeah. So I think ultimately it's about the partnership that HSBC have set out with us. So it's not, here you go, Mr. Vendor, do this. Yeah. It's, here you go, what help do you need from us? What support do you need? And that's really comforting. It's not like we're just going to put it over the wall and hope for the best. It's supported all the way through.
Wonderful, thank you, Rory. And I guess sometimes when folks build things, and I don't know if it's true for your organisation, but some suppliers will use subcontractors. So I guess the question, maybe start off with you, Ben. How do we ensure that subcontractors also follow the same standards as well? Like what can we do about that?
Yeah, so I'll answer from a procurement angle. I'll probably let Rory answer from a in real life how it works when you're
Sure.
a supplier angle. From a procurement angle, I think it's been really clear in our contracts, so making sure that our contractual clauses pass on to subcontractors' organisations, that we really make it clear that everything we ask for at a contract level with you as a partner must be passed on to your subcontractors, making sure that our partners know that, so that they're having those conversations with their subcontractors and making sure that they can check all those processes are in place, and really supporting the business in doing those checks and balances to make sure that we're ensuring that everything we're contracting at level 1 is being passed on to level 2 onwards. So I think from a procurement standpoint, it's a relatively simple process of making sure that's there. Obviously, in reality, Rory, you probably have a view as well of what that means when you're actually a supplier managing your sort of subcontractors.
Yeah, so I mean, if you take our organisation, we have a supply chain, just like anybody else. So we have the same practices that you do. So we have supplier agreement forms and contracts that we put in place. There's a flow down of any of the standards that we're working with from our clients, and we proactively look after those relationships too. So through the learnings that we have in terms of supporting our clients, we share that back through to the supply chain. They're actively involved in the testing, and let's say when we get to an end of the project, we run good disciplines like running post-implementation reviews, and any of the feedback that comes through those, we share that back down into our suppliers as well. But ultimately, when we're vetting our supply chain, we're looking for key criteria in terms of what they need to deliver. So things that we tend to outsource are things like video production. So the things that we ask for back from our supply chain are things like, can they provide things like VTT files for closed captions that get included into our e-learning? Are they testing any kind of film-based products or animations to take care of things like epilepsy? Is it going to cause a seizure or anything like that? We make sure that testing is done and that they're involved in that process. And any learnings is shared throughout the team through those post-implementation reviews.
Wonderful, yeah. What advice would you give to other suppliers and their subcontractors looking to embed digital accessibility into their products and services?
I'd say it's not just about the technology. The design thinking and the content is just as important when it comes to creating an accessible experience. Even if your tool, your technology is AA compliant, if the learner journey is confusing or you haven't used inclusive language, then you'll lose the end user. It's a team effort from different disciplines. So you've got the visual design from your art director, so your colour contrast, font legibility, spacing, layout, the learning design itself, so the flow of the content, terminology, instruction. You've got your developers and your tech team who are responsible for the navigation, the interaction, and of course your testers who are ensuring the quality of the learning you produce. And inclusive design should be one design for all. So avoid content or interactions which are only available to certain user groups. We can easily pigeonhole user groups, but everyone's access needs are individual. And one which actually come up earlier today in another talk, but you've got situational limitations. So on a video, you might opt for closed captions instead of listening to audio. If you've got low bandwidth or connectivity issues, you might want to read the transcript. And even if you're in a bright, sunny lit area, you might want to change the contrast on your display. And of course, temporary disabilities, one which I'm familiar with myself at the moment. Yep. But if you've got a broken arm or it's in a sling, you might be opting to tab via the keyboard. So it's this type of knowledge that lets a buying organisation know what you bring to the table and the values you hold. So it's open, transparent discussions and the commitment to quickly address any gaps in those end user needs that it's important for maintaining the relationship.
Yeah, thanks, Kirsty. Ben, Rory and Kirsty have touched on what suppliers can do to give buyers the info they need at the outset and what's required during the rest of the relationship. But I know we've been looking at contracts and the post-launch side of things as well. how can contracts and the ongoing vendor management process help?
Yeah, so I'm a procurement person, right? So I love a process. So we see this as, I guess, a three-stage process. So stage one, which is where we're at and where we've delivered, is upfront asking digital accessibility questions in our RFPs, making sure that we're really upfront with our requirements when we go out to market. What follows that in sort of stage two and stage three is contract management. So it's great asking for all this upfront and talking to suppliers really early, but if we don't actually contract any of that or make a commitment to it, then what's the point in asking it? So I think it's that first piece of being really clear what our standards are. Second piece is really looking at how do we take that and put it into a contract that makes sense for both parties, that's deliverable, that allows us to acknowledge that it might be that we've agreed we won't be fully accessible on day one, but we need to be by day 30 or day 40 or whatever, and how do we make sure that we put a commitment to that? And then again, stage three really goes into the ongoing management piece, which is like stage one, if you put it into the contract but no one cares or ever looked at that contract again, how are we making sure that we're delivering to those standards, that if we've agreed by day 30, we've actually delivered by day 30. So I think it's really important not to just go in and say, we're going to go out to market and we're going to ask all these questions up front and that's a tick in the box and we've done our job and we've gone out and said, this is our requirements. It's also about making sure that we concrete those requirements into contracts and that we ongoing monitor them, make sure that we're delivering them. These requirements will change, right, over time. They'll adapt, they'll develop, and we need to make sure that we also adapt and develop and build that in. So I think it's really important to capture those sorts of free processes. Obviously, and Kirsty, you made the point, collaboration is key. So that's not just procurement, it's working closely with the business, it's working closely with your teams, Arati, and making sure as a whole, I guess all the way through that journey, that piece of end user being at the heart of everything we do is kind of built into that. So it's not just we've asked the questions, we've then contracted them, we're then checking that as we go through. So I think that's where I see the sort of next steps for us being.
Thank you. So we've had occasions where businesses, or where they've experienced, suppliers will say they can't update the product base because it will impact other clients who share the same code base, you know, if you're thinking of kind of the off-the-shelf types of products, or it's going to take a really long time to complete. How do we deal with that kind of situation, right? Look, for me, it can only be a positive thing if many end users are going to benefit if they update their products. Updates to technology are evolving, they have to. And legislation is also evolving. So again, if you are talking to suppliers, think about that. Think about letting them know that, you know, regulation around this is only getting stronger. I don't think businesses can take the line of not doing anything about it. They just can't afford not to include accessibility. If they don't include it, they're at risk of losing customers, at risk of losing reputation, depending on who you are, potential financial penalties as well. So I think it's just really important to do. And personally, I think it needs to move from being a requirement to be treated as a bug if not accessible. Where you know where there are customised changes, yeah, I can understand that sometimes that may impact usability, but actually that's where user research can be extremely powerful, because if people aren't sure about how this is going to impact a product, you do user research, do testing, ask your customers what they're comfortable with. So I think it's a really good way to work with your suppliers. And then, I guess, what other alternatives, adjustments do you make, Rory, if you can't quite meet the requirements?
So, I think we're fortunate in our organisation. We've got a very strong culture within the organisation, which is based on open source kind of philosophy. So the Adapt authoring tool that we use is an open source product, and we work with a large community of developers to constantly update and grow that product base. I think through the challenges within products, within projects with any customer, It's about embracing them and learning from them, and then sharing that back into that open source kind of community, looking for a way of solving the problem and then bringing that back through. By the way that we work, in essence, the open source nature of that product means that what we do and what we learn from and what we build into the ADAPT framework gets shared to a wider group of developers that then benefits many, many other organisations, because they're getting the source code that's been fixed and put right, etc., that delivers a more accessible experience to people. So it's about embracing it really, and I always like the agile kind of methodology, which is there's no fear of failure. It's fear, you learn from it, and then you improve and you adapt and you bring that forward and put that into the next iteration of your product.
And I think, Arati, you made the point earlier, which I think is really important on that. It's the candid conversations. So it's having really upfront conversations, really candid conversations about what can't we do. In HSBC's world, that might be where can we support? What support can we provide you as a supplier to add to that? So I think having those conversations as early as possible is really important.
Yeah.
I think we've got to the point now, though, Arati, which is, and I think Kirsty said it earlier on, which is at first there were things that we had to put right within the products. We've now got to the balancing point. Now we're on the other side of that fence, and everything is about continuous improvement. So everything we do in each project now is about adding to what's already there and taking it further forward.
Absolutely. And I suppose we can't really have this conversation without touching on cost. So I think, again, from my perspective, the earlier you look at this, the earlier you do this, the better chance you can manage costs, because I think trying to fit accessibility at the end can actually end up costing organisations more. And then the other things that people can do is really creating an accessible design language. Again, being accessible by design. You can look at the partnerships you work with as well, so thinking about how you would scale. So it comes down to your requirements and how can partnerships help that and help manage that cost. But Rory, or Kirsty, any thoughts around that?
I think from a cost point of view, you do need to expect to build a bit of cost into your budgets when setting out on a project. We've built in a lot of our learning already into what we do every day, so that's at no cost to our clients. That's built into our standard pricing model. But if you're asking for things like additional testing or testing different devices that you might hold within your organisation for assistive technologies and that type of thing, you have to factor in time, and we have to factor in time to do that testing. But ultimately, that's leading towards an investment to making that product better. So yeah, there is a cost involved in it, but I think it's an acceptable cost to do the right thing, really. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. I'm just conscious of time, so I think we all agree the end users benefit, but what's in it for the supplier?
I think for us, it's about our reputation is foremost. I would say about 80% of our business is repeat business. So if we're delivering the right products, then it's about bringing more business back in. So the benefit is there through that repeat business that we do. And when other clients are asking about our capability in this space, the more evidence that we can show that we're doing it well for organisations like HSBC and so on, goes a long way in assuring our credentials in what we're saying through our RFP replies and so on. So yeah, it's just an ongoing natural kind of benefit cycle of saying, yes, we can do this stuff and we have the evidence to show it. We have client testimonies and end users saying, yeah, how great our products are. So, yeah.
Super. Okay, Rory, thank you. That was good. That was great to hear. So, what I'm hoping, key takeaways for me is about setting a strategy. Right? You've got to set this right at the top. Collaboration is key. We've had this a couple of times in the talk today. And then setting those expectations early on with the suppliers to let them know what you need their solutions to do. monitor and assess performance. We need to understand, okay, they brought something to the table, it might be accessible from the start, but if it's something they're continuing to maintain, it still has to meet the standards, still has to be usable by everyone. And the other advice I'd give to suppliers is be transparent about the support that is needed, because it might be that organisations like ourselves can provide training or another type of support, or just help you along the way, and make sure that we're getting what we need out of it as well, in terms of making sure we're having seamless experiences with our customers. And look, if your organisation has the resources, please be a force for change. And one thing I'm really proud that HSBC can offer is the chance for people outside of HSBC to attend the training courses that we've put on for our own staff. So for those of you in the room, please sign up to our course. I think you can do that on the same level, room 11. For those of you online, we have information on our hsbc.com digital accessibility pages. You can find some information there. Please reach out to us, because we can support you and your teams as well. I really want
to back up what Artie's saying, and I think it was mentioned in the key address yesterday in the morning session, which is what HSBC is yours in terms of knowledge and sharing. Kineo put a number of our different design teams through the training that HSBC offer around digital products. It was great training. It brought us up to a level where we were able to converse at the same level as the internal teams about the design of accessible products around e-learning, etc. Kirsty's been on it. So it doesn't matter how experienced you are, you've got someone that's very experienced here around this subject. It's very beneficial. So yeah, I would implore you go for it. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's it.
Thank you. Well, carry on. That was fantastic. Thank you very much, everybody. You were talking about takeaways. I think that partnership stuff is really important. Seeing the crossover between the world of the purchasing decision and the person who's trying to sell, and also the supply chain moment of how that's cascading on, and those values are then embedded in the decisions that are made today and then further down the chain. So it's wonderful. Thank you so much for a glimpse into that relationship building and how important accessibility is in the middle of that. So wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.